Hey, welcome back to the channel. Billy, Gym City Welding. Today I'm working on the 1964 Super Sport Impala. On today's episode, we're going to show you how to convert your factory steering column to work with your CPP 500 power steering conversion kit. But before we get started, let me take a moment and thank this episode's sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Cool Cars Engineering, your #1 source for all your hydraulic needs. Cool Car's easy-to-use website allows you to choose the parts and the components that work right for you. Whether you're building a full custom lay-and-play setup or a competition vehicle, CCE has the parts that you need. If you're in the market for cylinders, then look no further than CCE Competition Pro cylinders. These cylinders come standard with a polypack seal design and bronze bushing. Also, all CCE competition cylinders are made right here in the USA. If power and performance is what you're after, then look no further than Cool Cars Engineering's revolutionary piston pump. Cool Cars Engineering has the industry knowledge and experience to give you the information you need to make the best decision for your ride. Whether you need a single part or a fully customized solution, our expert technicians can help you find exactly what you need when you need it the most. Be sure to check out our website at coolcars.org. Okay, so in today's episode, we're talking about how to convert your factory Impala steering to work with your CPP 500 power steering kit. This isn't really just a simple bolt-on deal. It does require some modification, and I've looked at this from many different ways. I sought the advice from some expert builders and pro builders out there who do this kind of thing, and ultimately I've narrowed it down to 3 different choices. So today we're going to go over the 3 different choices on how to convert this to work with your kit. So all that and more, stay tuned. Okay, so like I was saying, I narrowed down the steering to 3 different choices. I'll kind of explain why I went the way I did towards the end, but let's talk about the first 2 and why I chose not to use those. So the first one is you can modify your factory steering shaft. There's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. Guys do that all the time. That's fine. The problem I was running into is that my steering there was something wrong initially when I got the car, and I wasn't really sure, and I tracked it down to inside of this unit right here. Now some of these parts are becoming really hard to find, and if you do find them, they're really, really expensive. To rebuild this thing, I don't know, it could be $150, $200, something like that, which is okay. I mean, hey, it's just money, right? But at the end of the day, I decided, you know what, I don't really like this setup. I'm going to simplify it. The next thing is that the factory one uses a rag joint, which is, again, fine. No problem with the rag joint. But ultimately, I didn't want to deal with a rag joint wearing out and having to replace that. So the next step up would be CPP actually sells something very similar to this that works in conjunction with their 500 series gearbox or 600 depending on what you're buying. And essentially what it is it's almost like a stock shaft with a rag joint that fits the 30 spline 3/4 inch CPP shaft. The one big difference is that the top end has a collar or a sleeve that's 3/4 inch that will actually slide over the factory steering column shaft, and then you can run a bolt through that. Now ultimately, I chose to end up using these universal joints. So you got an upper and a lower, and then I also chose to go with a 3/4 inch double D steering shaft. Not that double D, this double D. Anyways, you know, there's many different options, there's many different ways you can do this. Ultimately, I chose this for a couple reasons. One, just easeability to service these kinds of things, to work on them. 2, it simplifies and gets rid of the rag joint, and it gets rid of everything that's going on inside of here. And 3 is the cost. To buy the CPP version of this that bolts on directly, it's right around 97 bucks. So figure tax and shipping and all that. This method right here ended up costing me $78 total. That's everything. And I'll share where I picked up these parts from. And then ultimately you can decide what works best for you. Now the parts that I ended up purchasing, I purchased everything you see here from Amazon. super fast shipping, just like always. You know, it's Amazon. It is what it is. The double D shaft is from All Star Performance, and I'll show where I got this from with the part number. And then the next would be these universal joints. Now, there's something to note with universal joints. You can get these stainless, you can get these chrome, you can get these raw. In this particular instance, these appear to be coated, but it's just mild steel, okay? I didn't splurge and do all that. I just got the basics to get it going. On the steering box side, this is important. If you're doing the CPP 500, you need the 3/4 30 spline, okay? That's what fits the 500 box. So this would slide over the box. The opposite side would be the double D shaft. So that would be this, just like so. And then it's also got set screws, which, sorry, a little loud. Set screws, so you can, you know, tighten down on this. Pretty simple setup. They're extra long, so you can trim them down if you need to. So that's the steering box side. Now, going to the column side is a little bit different. So again, we're gonna have the same double D on the other side of the shaft, but the part that goes on the column is gonna be a 3/4 smooth. So that's what they actually advertise this as. So it's 3/4 double D to 3/4 smooth. That fits right over the steering column shaft, and that's where you actually attach it to the steering column. Now, something to note, depending on where you live in the world or in the United States, here in the US, we have what's called DOT regulations. There are some guys who swear that you don't want a welded joint in your steering column because it's supposed to be a collapsible steering column shaft, okay? I'm not telling you to weld this to your steering column. All I'm going to say is that there's guys that do and there's guys that don't. One of the things you can do is you can actually drill this with the steering shaft and run, you know, I don't know, 1/2 inch, 9/16 bolt through it. That's pretty common, but you'll see some guys who will actually TIG weld this completely around the column. Again, I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just saying there are guys that do that. So, you know, total disclosure, that's on you guys, whatever you choose to do. But it's really simple. It's 3 pieces. Am I going to say that it's bulletproof and going to be 100% trouble-free? No, because like anything that's man-made, you know, it could break. Especially for the kind of, you know, stress we're putting these cars under, especially if you're building a hopping vehicle or whatnot. You know, things wear out, but they're cheap enough to where, and they're common enough that you can get them practically anywhere. So that's ultimately why I chose this method. But no matter what method works best for you, go with it. Get that steering hooked up, get that car back on the road. So that's why I chose what I did. So stick with me, I get you set up and we'll make some modifications. So here we go. Okay, so for the sake of explaining everything, you're not going to be able to see me in the camera. I want you mainly just to focus on the steering shaft itself. So when you get your steering shaft off your car, this is what you're going to find, okay? This, let's call this a, I don't know, collet, will be slid over the shaft that has this pin that is driven through it. Your job is to drive this pin out from the top, or I'm sorry, from the top here through this sleeve, and then you can pull this sleeve off. Okay, and what you're left with is the steering shaft that has a 3/8 hole. So this pin is roughly 3/8. A 3/8 bolt fits that perfectly. Super simple to get off there. Just have yourself a pair of vice grips. That way you can clamp onto the sleeve and tap it off with a hammer, and that thing will slide right off. Now, what I have here is the actual piece itself that I'm going to replace that with. You remember earlier we were talking about welding this. So this is the reason why I would not recommend welding this. Once this slides on, and remember this is 3/4 of an inch. If you ever need to tear your steering column apart to replace either the lower bearing or the upper bearing, or just to basically pull the shaft out of the steering column to rebuild this whole thing, you would have to cut this off, and then you would end up having to buy another one of these. So again, I don't recommend the whole welding part if you can avoid it. But so what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up drilling a hole in this for a 3/8 bolt to pass through the factory 3/8 hole that's already in the steering shaft. And basically that'll be a bolt in, you know, piece from that point. So that just kind of explains the steering shaft. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Okay, so here we are now in the process. So I've already marked this piece, as you can see, and I've already drilled my 3/8 hole. And basically what I did was just measure 3/8 from the edge, center punch it, take it over to the drill press, and then drill a 3/8 hole straight through. And then I've already put a grade 8 bolt and nut on here. So may add a washer, may not, I don't really know, but that's the gist of it. So that's what holds that onto the column. Now, remember what I said, the portion that goes to the actual steering box is 3/4 double D by 30 spline, 3/4 for the CPP 500. So that's important, okay? Now, hopefully the next step here, because this is the first time I've ever done this, so we're doing this together, is we're going to insert the double D shaft. Now remember, you don't want to bottom this thing out, because if you do, then the spline won't be able to move. It'll be bound up. You just barely want it to where it's flush with the inside, where you can just barely feel it with your finger. And you're going to tighten down the jam nut a little bit with the Allen key, the Allen screw. Okay, so that kind of gives us a ballpark. So now we're completely lined up with our other piece. So in theory, if I have everything straight, just where it should be, I should be able to mark that, mark the double D shaft, cut it, you know, grind the burr off, and that technically should be it. I suppose you could probably measure this with a tape measure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to eyeball mark this thing, and then I'm going to double check with a tape measure to make sure I got the length that I need. You know, if I did screw this up cutting this, it's not the end of the world. It's $16. It's not that big of a deal. But, you know, we want to get it right the first time. So let me get this thing marked and measured out, and then we'll start cutting. Okay, so it looks like it's going to be roughly about 16 inches in length. Make sure I got this where it needs to be. I'm pretty sure I do. Okay, so now I just got to cut it. So let me get set up, I'll cut that, and I'll be right back. Okay, moment of truth. Let's see how this goes. So I'm going to take this bolt out. That way I can slide this up a little bit. Let's see if I can get this shaft lined up the first try. Make sure that's right where that needs to be. Tighten the bottom set screw. Sorry guys, ladies, I know I'm blocking the camera with my arms, but that's the best vantage point I got right now for you. Of course, everything's only hand tight here. I'm not, you know, torquing anything or making anything super duper tight right at the moment. I just want to get it to a point to where we can try to turn the wheel, make sure there's clearance where there needs to be clearance in the steering.
Your frequency 123.9er.
Roger. Huh? Request vector. Over. What?
Flight 209er, clear for vector 324.
We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
Tower radio clearance.
That's it. So, let's try this again. There you go. So that's pretty much that. Looks like everything works as it should. Okay, so I've actually jacked the front of the car up off the ground, and I'm just going to turn the wheel, I don't know, maybe a full turn, just to show you how smooth the action is and how good this works. Okay, so looks like that's just about gonna wrap up the steering portion. Pretty straightforward project, not super hard. I would rate this maybe a 5 just because you gotta drill that hole through that universal joint, but it's really not that bad. Just take your time, use some cutting fluid if you have it, WD-40, something like that. And I recommend getting the double D shaft with both universal joints on it facing in the same direction. So you know it's double D, so it can only slide on there one way. So get your universal joints on that shaft. Make sure they're in line with one another before you drill that hole for the bolt and the universal joint. You want to make sure it's in line with the steering shaft of the steering column. So not too super hard here, but as always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll do my best to answer them like always. Just a couple quick shout outs. First shout out would be Working Class Car Club, Dayton, Ohio. Shout out to you guys. Met up with those guys recently. Super cool dudes. So thanks guys for saying hi, and thank you for the battery loan. You know who you are. Appreciate you. And then a shout out, as always, to our sponsor for this episode, Cool Cars, Hijacker Hydraulics, CCE Hydraulics. Be sure to check them out. And last but not least, everyone that's bought a sticker, I'm on round 3 of shipping those things out. So thank you so much for the support. It means the world to me. You really don't know how much it means to me. So thank you again. I appreciate you. If anybody wants a sticker, $2, hit me up. I'll tell you how to get there and how to make that purchase. So again, I appreciate everyone. As always, working on the Impala. Till next time, I will be at USO, Lima, Ohio. That is next weekend, the 19th. God, I hope I got that right, a Saturday. Please, if you're out there, you see me, hit me up, say hi. I love saying hi to everyone at the shows. So look for me out there. But until next time, peace. We'll see you later. Have a great weekend. Take care.